So now I would like to go into our Q&A session. So I would like to invite Joe to confront. So throughout this presentation, I'm sure that some of you got better understanding of heritage interpretation and presentation, but also have some questions and comments. So please don't hesitate to raise your hand. Our staff will be giving you the wireless mic, and probably Joe and I can answer. So yes, please, back there. Yes.
Thank you.
Can you please introduce yourself
yes,
as well?
Of course. My name is Florian. I'm part of the Austrian delegation, Austrian National Commission for UNESCO. Thank you for your presentations, need to say. I got one remark / question and one request. Okay, stand up, hello. My first question would be, because when we talk about heritage interpretation in a World Heritage context, we have like a two-level situation we need to approach. The one would be the interpretation of on a site level itself, the storytelling we need to do on a site level. But the other level is World Heritage itself, the World Heritage system, the interpretation and the dissemination of the very idea and of the concepts and the system. And I think, as we all know, that can be a hard piece of cake to swallow and a complex thing. So I wonder if there are any approaches, any new ideas you've been, developing when it comes to kind of that very abstract thing we need to tell in World Heritage interpretation. And the other part would be a request, because we are currently on the way of kind of in the very early stages of an idea on a national level in Austria to implement some kind of capacity building / certification / whatever it might end up being for multiplicators, disseminators / the classic guides that are around in World Heritage sites, in order to train them to better understand and disseminate the concepts of heritage interpretation on the one side and the World Heritage system on the other hand. So if anybody has maybe good practices, ideas, concepts about that, I'd be happy to know them. Maybe not right now, find me at the Austrian delegation seat, but the other one would be the question to you. Thank you.
So I think it's an interesting question, and I think the complexities of interpretation are many. I mean, I think there are many different levels that you need to look at it. As I said, even if you're just dealing at the site level, I mean, there are many people who would say, well, what you need to do is you need to tell the story of the OUV, and that's it. And my argument back would be, no, you don't need to do that, because there are many different stories that are told. And actually, I really liked what Marie-Laure said about the fact that different members of the family are going to tell different stories, and how do you reconcile them, I guess, or mediate them, because that's ultimately what needs to happen. So I mean, there's already complexity just at that level, and now what you're doing is, you're right, you're bringing in even more complex issue of how do you interpret it within the system, within the World Heritage system. I don't have an easy answer for this. What I would say is, the states parties, don't think of it that way, and actually you need to start thinking of it that way. You need to start thinking that what you're doing, and again, that my first point about it's the nomination file, which is actually the basis for all of your interpretation. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think any state parties think in those terms. I think what they think of is, I just have to fill out this form, and this form is a lot more complicated now than it was 30 years ago or 40 years ago, but I just need to fill this form out. And so I think there's a mindset that needs to be changed on that. If you're asking me, have any states parties done that? I don't know. That's a good question. But maybe we need to all start working together a little bit more. We, the advisory bodies, we, the World Heritage Center, we, WIPIC, because God, we actually have a Category 2 center doing this now. So maybe we can actually start building resource materials and having, again, it's not a question of courses in that case or trainings in that case, but at least sort of awareness sessions. And when we do information meetings at UNESCO, when we do orientation sessions, when we have opportunity to visit various states parties and talk to the people at that level, I think that's how we have to start doing it. And It's really not an answer to your question, but it's a consideration on what I think is a really good question, essentially.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's a really hard question because that's the reason why we actually organizing this side event to discuss actually to the pathway to advancing interpretation within the World Heritage System. So we also have the very similar questions as well. So what we do actually is that we want to develop, we want to see the World Heritage other than OUV. So we want to develop a lot of other perspectives and other extended values to be reflected in the preservation management and processes. And if you have any other examples or good practice, please share. Otherwise, yes, you have raised first. Yes, please, in the second row. And then, sorry, but do you want to add right away?
Can I come in first?
Oh, yeah, sure, of course.
Okay, I'm from Malaysia. I'm a site manager. It's always inspiring to hear from Joe. And you mentioned about the interpretation should start on the nomination to say, my question is, shall we look a bit backward, earlier than that, even before tentative list? Because I believe that, as you totally are right, that we need to think beyond just the site itself, because as a site managers, we realize that in order to have empowerment of the local communities to the sites, it has to go to the schools, it has to go to the community, and let the communities tell us how do they interpret the heritage. This is a call that, from the site itself. And my question now to Joe is, for example, my site has been 15 years, so what should we do if our interpretation might be a little bit further or difficult or different from what it was nominated 15 years ago? What can we do on that? That is my question to you.
Well, Mike, all right. So let me comment first on your first point, and then to your second point. Yes, actually, you're right. Actually, the interpretation needs to go far before the nomination file, because theoretically, if a site has some sort of national register or even some sort of meaning at a national level or at a local level, obviously that interpretation is going to be building up. And in some cases, I mean, that's just something that people know. A local community may know what the story is there, what the interpretation is there. So yes, this actually does start much earlier. We're talking about World Heritage here, so that's why I start with the nomination file, but you're absolutely right. And obviously that nomination file should build on the interpretation that already exists. Hopefully, we know about those things even before. So yes, I would agree with that. And I would say actually the tentative list is another first step in the interpretation process, essentially, because you already have to at least tell a story for the tentative list to make an argument why this should actually even be on the on the tentative list. The second question, just remind me again.
Yeah. Okay. What so, if there are different generations of how do we read the interpretations. For example, a site that has been 20 years, 30 years.
Okay.
So what can we do?
So again, the answer to that question is complex in the sense that it depends on what you want to do with it. In the sense that, and this is a problem in a way, as our interpretation and therefore our understanding of a property changes, it is very possible that might have implications for the OUV. Oh my God, people are going to be killing me when I say that, because the idea is that OUV is immutable, and once the committee has approved a statement of OUV, that's the OUV. This creates problems in a way, in the sense that we do interpret and reinterpret, and we find new things. At that point in time, at an official level, if there's a desire to do this, you can run it back through the World Heritage System if you want. You can do a renomination. That may involve the same property but with different criteria or enhanced criteria, but having to be approved by the committee. It may involve actually different boundaries. I could definitely imagine situations where all of a sudden we nominated one building, but actually this is in a historic town, or it's in a landscape, and the landscape actually is important. And as I continue to do the reinterpretation, I suddenly realize that building has a lot more meaning, in the landscape, and then that's a renomination of a cultural landscape. But that also means all the work involved in doing a new nomination and the costs involved in that and all that kind of stuff. So that's one possible solution. The other possible solution is to just do your reinterpretation and do your presentation at a site level. And maybe your cultural landscape doesn't need to be a World Heritage property. I would say it would be nice to have it as a World Heritage property at the landscape level, but you can still do your reinterpretation and your presentation based on that new thinking, but still maintain the World Heritage site as the building in the middle of that landscape. So you have a lot of different options as to actually how you want to proceed with that. I'm suspecting there may be people from the World Heritage Center who want to hit me over the head for saying that. There may be people from the other advisory bodies who fortunately have left the room, so they're not going to be able to hit me over the head for it. But I mean, I think, you know, you can do it officially, or you can do it sort of unofficially within the World Heritage System. Obviously, at the national level, it may be official. At a local level, it may be official. But you have to play with that and make your decision. But I would not suggest that you rest on what you've got and not do reinterpretation. I mean, I think it's still important for you to rethink these things and continue to develop your stories, and then how you choose to end up presenting that, whether it's through World Heritage or in other mechanisms, I think is up to you as a site, as a country. I hope that answered, because it was a really good question, actually.
Thank you so much. Since we have a limited time remaining, we can take one or two questions. Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Yes, he's been waiting.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eva Jonich from France, from the University Côte d'Azur. And I wanted to thank you for this excellent presentation. It was very interesting listening to all of you. And I have one question about what about sites that are not open to visitors? Because as far as I know, this is not a condition for sites to be inscribed on the World Heritage List. And sometimes they are not open because there are some conflicts, or because it's a kind of monastery that is closed to public. And I understood that there are also two important aspects. You said that this is not only about the interpretation towards the public and the visitors. There are other levels of interpretation and who it is meant to reach. And the other thing is that we have other possibilities, not only on site, but as you said, it's not exactly the same. So my question was, can you comment that? And also for your research, are those sites that shouldn't be taken into account something like separately? Because you cannot apply the interpretation in the same scope of the word for those sites. For your research, do you have been thinking about it, and maybe to make a separate subcategory, something like that? Thank you so much.
Okay, do you want to answer first, or? Oh, okay. For actually your first question, I'm also very curious because there's a demilitarization zone in between South and North Korea. So I would love to listen to your answer. And sorry about your second question. You did you understand what was it again? Sorry.
Not only those, I said all of the sites that are not open to visitors for some reason. Are they considered as separately? Because when you do your research about interpretation in the decisions or in other aspects, do you consider them differently? Because you can't apply in the same way the interpretation of these sites as you can do it for all of the others that are open to public.
Oh, okay. That was so examples of the decisions from the 2019 and to 2021, and that some of the sites are maybe exclusive to some, but some are open. So I think, I'm not sure I get the right answer.
I think to the first question, I think there are not that many sites. I understand what you're talking about, and yes, there are maybe monasteries or a religious building or a military building, as you said, actually, that may not be accessible, and that's clear. I think if that's the case, I mean, I don't think anybody's forcing it being opened or to have or to have public interpretation. Because another issue on that is there are also some places where there may be sort of sacred knowledge in a place There may be a situation also for management systems. A management system may be a management system that a local community or a particular local community may not actually want to divulge how their decisions are being taken. I mean, that there is a decision-making process for these sorts of things, and I think we have to look at that. And I can't speak for Ecomos, but I will in a way because Marielle's not here. I think we need to look at those things, and we need to understand that. And I think when there are situations where things shouldn't be divulged, then it's not that the interpretation shouldn't take place, but it shouldn't be made available. It shouldn't be made public at that point, and I think that's fine. We have a duty to make sure that a site is going to be managed well, but we don't have a duty to publish all of that information necessarily if, in a particular case, a local community, an indigenous group, let's say, says, no, I'm sorry, this is really something that's, that we have to hold close to ourselves, and it can't go further than that. So that's, I think, those are possible. I think in the case of how do you interpret them then, it depends. Again, it depends on if it's just a question of you can't visit a monastery, but maybe we can do electronic is not the right word, but computerized 3D kinds of things. We can, if there's a possibility to present that, to interpret it and present it in a different way, then by all means we should do that. We should discuss with the state party, we should discuss with the local community, and we should try to do it in a different way. In the case where that's not possible because that's really not okay with them, then again, our duty is to make sure that it's being managed well and that the attributes are actually going to be preserved over time. But if it's done in a way that we don't actually necessarily have to know exactly how it's being done, that's also okay. On the research side, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I don't know that you've considered it yet. I mean, maybe that's a category that needs to go into your research into the future, because it could be that those sites, and I actually don't know how many. I know there are a few, for sure, but I'm not really sure that there are a huge number of them, but it would be interesting maybe to create a separate category for that, sure.
So far, we haven't really considered that as a separate category. So, but we will be considering. Yes, we can start researching. Yes, lastly, we can take your question.
Well, my name is Amilcar Vargas. I'm the site manager of one of the 7 components of the work of Antoni Gaudí, a World Heritage Site inscribed in 2007. I just wanted to raise the awareness, 2005, sorry, about probably it's not needed to have an overall storytelling for a site that has several components. We, in the works of Antoni Gaudí, there are 7 very different components. All of them have a different storytelling. I guess that even Antoni Gaudí, he didn't have in his mind his own storytelling. Now, why we have to build a storytelling if probably he didn't have it? So one of the advantages of not having just one storytelling or big storytelling based on our shared outstanding universal value is that each of us, because of our specificity, we are able to diversify the storytelling. And instead of having one voice repeated in 7 places, we have 7 storytellings that if the people, they want to understand what is or what is the contribution of Antoni Gaudí, has to visit these 7 of them. The topic here is that we are very touristic sites, and it's very expensive to go to the sites. It's like in Pompeii, to go to the site and then to go to the 7 Pompeiis we have in it's a little bit expensive. In our webpage, I guess it's a case study that you can analyze that perhaps for sites with a serial nomination, for instance, Le Corbusier, which is in many different countries, having like a part, 10% of the storytelling of each site can be shared, but not creating all the storytelling under the umbrella of the outstanding universal value that we have been preserving and sharing, but each of us with a different specificity. And I don't have to request to the agreement of the other components what is the storytelling of Casa Batlló is telling to the world. Thank you.
Can I comment on that? Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you at the same time. So on the agree side, I fully agree with you that each of those components has its own story to tell, and I totally get that. And there could be significant differences between them. I agree. I mean, you mentioned Le Corbusier also. I mean, obviously there are huge differences between all the sites. Frank Lloyd Wright Same thing in the United States. So I completely agree with that. Having said that, they have been inscribed as one World Heritage property, and because they have been inscribed as one World Heritage property, there's got to be an umbrella story that you're telling, which doesn't negate the local stories, and each of those local stories needs to be there. And in fact, if I go to your component property, I'm not going to learn everything about the entire, but I should at least have an umbrella so that I at least understand that this is one of seven you said? Yeah, seven component properties, and that might even spur me on to go and visit some of the others at another moment. So I would say somehow you need at that point you need an interpretation strategy for all seven, which may be light. So again, it shouldn't be something that drives you crazy to try to invent something that that binds these together. But these are bound together because they're one site. So somehow or another, something at that level, at a light level, let's say, which gives the chapeau, if I can use the French term, and then each component part then needs to be much more specific. But I wouldn't say no, we don't need it, and only this, or I wouldn't say this is going to tell the whole story, and then you don't need this, the separate ones. I would actually argue you definitely need both of them. So, but it's an interesting case study, actually. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you very much. In Korea, we do have several other nominations, and I heard many heritage managers have the same questions as you. So I think you brought up very interesting, important topic, and we probably should include that in one of our research topics as well. Well, so I think it's past already 3 p.m. So it was a very interesting discussion and questions and presentations. Thank you so much for attending our event, and thank you so much, Joe, for your contribution. So I hope to connect with you through our collaboration. So please keep in touch. So yeah, we wrap it up here. So thank you so much, everyone.